Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
We're watching you, bro.
We're watching you. Mateo Aramburu, welcome to Footwork.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
It's been a long time coming. We were playing every day together for a while, and now we're on opposite sides of the world, but finally getting the episode together.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be finally doing this. It's been a long time coming.
We always start the same way, Mateo, and that's make your own path. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's what it is for most football players. It's to find your own way, to look for what's right for you, and to hopefully achieve what you dream. You know, I think everyone has their own dream. Everyone wishes for something different, but at the end of the day, living that dream is also, or living life to get to that day where you finally make it is also part of it. And I think that's what life as a football player is all about.
That's right. And someone who's been around the block, around the world.
Around the block.
Give us a brief. I mean, who are you? Where were you? And where are you going? And just give a brief summary of those things, because we've got a lot to dive into here.
Well, I'm Mateo Aramburu, half English, half Uruguayan. Grew up in many countries, many different countries. Chose to be a football player. Still doing it after 11 years now, professionally, and I hope to continue growing as a football player and as a human. And enjoying life, enjoying each moment.
Let's touch on some of the places, because you said you've grown up kind of a world traveler already. Can you kind of break down the places where you've stayed in, where you've grown up and where you've lived?
Well, I was born in Guatemala City. Both my parents were working there in the UN at the time. It was the place I was chosen to be born in. Moved when I was 8 months old, so I didn't really get to grow up there. We then moved to New York, which is where both my parents were based before moving to Guatemala. We then lived there for 2 years, so it's not something that I really remember very well, at all, actually. We then moved to Eritrea, which is where my first memories start to come. Eritrea is a country in Africa, used to be part of Ethiopia. A country with a lot of issues, which at the time were being resolved when we moved there. We lived there around 5 years. Then moved to Lebanon, Beirut. Lived there for 3 years. Then moved back to Guatemala. Around 3-4 years more there. And that's when my footballing journey started, where I was training with some teams in Guatemala, which then caught the eye of the Uruguayan national team. Tavares, which was the former Uruguayan national team coach. We then moved here with my father and my sister, while my mother moved to another country to continue working. And that's where life as a football player began.
It's crazy. Like I feel like I've talked to you about it before, but I feel like there's always places that I haven't heard about, like that you spend time. And even researching this, it was like, oh shit, he played here, he played there. Like, for such a young guy, I mean, you've lived in many places, you also played in many places.
Yeah, I think it definitely made it easier to have moved so much as a kid as well, due to my parents' work.
Yeah.
It made it a lot easier for me to then move as a football player as well. So it's never really been much of a challenge to move to different places, to visit new cultures,
to adapt.
Countries.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a more of a positive thing than anything else for me. Yeah.
But how was that? Like, were you playing football always as a child, regardless of where you were living, or was it only until you were a little bit older where you really started to get into it?
It was always football. My dad is a footballer himself. He grew up playing himself in the streets of Uruguay. He also played in football clubs, and it's something that I grew up with. my dad has told me stories of me playing, or well, him playing with with any kind of ball in our apartment in New York when I was a baby, kicking balls at 10 months old. So definitely football has always been part of my life. In Eritrea, it was part of my day-to-day, which is just kick a ball around. Behind our house was I call it a football pitch, but it wasn't really a football pitch. It was just a dirt field with wooden goalposts, and we would just play football there. So yeah, I definitely grew up playing football with friends, and especially my dad, who taught me almost everything I know about football. So it's always been a part of me.
You spoke about in the beginning there about dreams and kind of the dream to become a professional footballer. When did that dream kind of become a reality for you? And I guess as footballers, the dream always kind of changes. You think it's going to be one thing and it turns out to be something else, and then you readjust the dream. So when did that dream start, and how has it changed throughout the years?
I think it first started, you always grow up again, if you love football and you grow up watching football, it's always something that you dream of, to play at the biggest stage. I think it doesn't really matter how old you are. But I remember, again, speaking with my father about these things and remembering, I think it was around 11, 12 years old where I told my dad I had decided that I wanted to become a professional football player.
You decided right there.
You're making the decision.
Something that, I'd always wanted.
Your dad, you sat him down at dinner. You said, "Dad, look."
Yeah, important meeting. You got to know. I want to be a football player. And I remember, he told me at the time that, he asked me if I was sure, and I was like, yeah, definitely, it's definitely what I want to do. And he was like, well, get ready, because it's definitely not as easy as it might seem, or as glamorous as it might seem. And he was definitely right, because as you mentioned, dreams or ideas of becoming a football player, a professional football player, definitely can change. No one's career, no one's life in general is perfect. Things happen, and you've got to adjust, you've got to change your short-term goals. Definitely, I think long-term goals can stay, but short-term goals have to change, and you've got to look for other things that you enjoy as well, and other ways to make it to your goal. So it's definitely been a rough journey, and it's changed. My mindset has changed a lot. I've had to find ways to make things work in different ways than I expected, and we're still here. We're still trying. We're still
here, baby.
Trying to grow as a football player, and hopefully reach that goal that I've always wanted.
Do you find that when you were that young, that's 11, 12-year-olds, you have no idea, you just saw, I want to be a pro, you think Champions League and the World Cup, but as you were getting into the professional ages, was there ever a point where you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be? In terms of the expectations of what you thought pro football was going to be?
Pro football, I would say, it's hard to say, because the idea of a pro footballer's, or the way I thought a pro footballer's life was at 12, is very different to what it actually is. As a kid, you don't really know the sacrifice or the day-to-day life of a football player. As you said, you see Champions League, you see the World Cup, you see the big stage, you see stadiums, fans, people cheering for you, and it's all glamorous. And it's not really like that. Football is a lot more than just that. It's the day-to-day, it's the training, it's the mental side, it's the everything you have to work with to actually get there. We all know that. We've all been through it, and it's not as easy or as fun as it might seem. I think if you end up making it, or if you end up playing football at a level, professional or even semi-professional in some ways, you do get to live those joys or those glamorous moments that you once hoped for. But definitely not as easy as I once thought.
No, and I guess a lot of the times too is you have to deal with a lot of unprofessionalism within professional football. There's always things behind their scene. There's always things, even right there, that again you probably didn't think about when you were younger, and you probably wouldn't think you would have to deal with. But especially playing in different places throughout the world, how have you found those times when you kind of had to, I guess, put up with things that you weren't expecting in terms of professional football or semi-professional football, or what it took to be at your dream?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, I think football, there is a lot of unprofessionalism in professional football. Generally, there is a lot of that in the game itself and outside. Again, it's not only about the football, the game, the 90 minutes. It's a lot more than that, and it's definitely one of the hardest parts, I think, of being a football player. At least in my own career, it's been something that I've had to deal with a lot. A lot of unprofessionalism outside, with agents, with people who work in clubs, people who make you believe things that end up being very different to what they might have, or you might have thought it would have been. And that's definitely been a very challenging part of the career. I think I've managed well with it. I'm still playing. I'm still fighting for to continue growing, and I think that's what counts. I think if you continue fighting for what you want and working hard, then even with those unprofessional people or organizations, you can still make it and get past all of that.
Yeah. Before we jump into the now, because we have to give congrats on the new club and we have to dive into the new experience, but we talked about long-term goals before, and I was just wondering if you could share with us maybe an example of a long-term goal that you've had.
I think my main goal was always to play football as a professional, as a high level professional. And I think that's the goal that remains today. When I say high level football, it might depend on each person or what each person sees as high level football. I think for me, it's a place where you feel comfortable, where you enjoy football. It's never going to be easy, but it might make it easier. Where
sure.
You can live from football, where you don't have to worry about anything else, and you can really put all your focus there and enjoy all the pleasures of what football can give you.
It's a great goal.
Yeah, I think that's the main one, and it's always going to be that. And once you reach it, is to just maintain that. I think that's also a very important thing, because it's very easy to drop back down. So it's as hard to get up there as it is to maintain. So.
To stay there, yeah.
And let's start with the now. I mean, you're back in Uruguay after a tough few years actually in Europe. You had a few injuries, and you were in Germany. Then a few injuries. Then, the luck was not really on your side in this case. But you've landed back in the first league in Uruguay. How's that been?
Yeah, it's been tough the last years, as you said, which is why I'm really grateful to be back here, where football started for me, professionally at least, or the idea of being a professional. As you mentioned, things in Europe, there were highs and lows, but it definitely ended in a negative way, I think, in my case. But it's great to be back. It's great to have hope again, to have the feeling that goal or that dream that I've always had is still well alive. Even though I am playing professionally here, as a football player, you're always dreaming or wanting to improve, and I think being able to come back here and play in Uruguay in the first league is definitely an incredible step for me. So I'm really happy and grateful to have come here for sure.
Tell us a little bit about the culture of South American and of Uruguayan football in particular, especially in relation to kind of your last years in Germany.
It's very different. I mean, luckily, I know about it. I grew up here, so it's not something that's been. It wasn't a shock, because it definitely can be if you don't know what you're coming to. But it's been good. I think I've come here. I felt, well, I was well integrated by the group. The mentality here is very tough. It's a very old school, old fashioned way of playing football, of integrating people, of integrating players. Their main focus is about being together as a team. There's a lot of group work or teamwork outside of training. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of tough love. A lot of aggression, a lot of on the pitch and outside the pitch. So it's just constant aggression, you could say, which is not easy. But if you get used to it and you know how it works, you can definitely get around it and also enjoy, getting through these things.
So you're saying the tough love, is it like you just have to kind of, I guess, know that nothing is personal in these regards, that everything is just out of emotion and passion?
Well, yes and no. I think it is a lot of emotion, a lot of passion, especially on the pitch. But there's also this mentality of wanting people to be strong and be tough. So if they see any weakness in you, they try and change that mentality by being tough on you, right? So if they see any weakness, they'll try and attack you in ways to make you feel, wow, okay, I can't see this way. There is no room for being weak in any way. So it's definitely a lot of, again, tough love. I don't know how else to put it.
Is there anything that, because it's very interesting how you say it, it seems like they exploit any weakness within you to take it out and then to try and confront it so that you can confront it. Was there anything when you came back, anything that you noticed that they were kind of, taking out in particular and kind of exploiting from your personality or from your game?
Well, I think a bit being Uruguayan, but also having this background of moving a lot and not really looking or acting very Uruguayan in some regards. They've definitely tried, they've tried to, in some ways, change that. They like the group to be very similar in every way. So if a player is different, then they'll try and change that in some ways. But I think, again, coming back to me growing up in football here, I've been able to adapt with that, and I've been able to, get better at some things which might not be seen as a good thing or a better thing in some countries, but here it is. And I've definitely been working on that, trying to be tougher, trying to not play in a fun way, and more in a, we're actually playing to win, or you play until death in a way. It's almost as a war. You're going to war, and the only way out is winning. That's the mentality, and I've had to get used to being or playing in that way again. And it's been interesting. I think I've been getting better at that, and I've been evolving in that, and I hope to continue to get better.
Would you say the mentality is the biggest thing that you've been trying to work on and improve on versus the way your style of play, or your style of play is you're trying to adapt to the team and the league and all that?
100%. I think that's the number one thing, mentality. Your style of play is combined with the mentality, because if you're constantly aggressive and playing in a way where, again, you're going to war, then your style of play is going to change naturally. You both know that I have a style of football that I want to play good football. I want to try and win in a way where we can, play well. And I've definitely had to adapt in certain ways to not just play to score in a nice way, but just to score in any way. The best example is Luis Suarez. he will score no matter the consequence. You know, he will do anything to score. So that's pretty much the mentality. That's the easiest example to give you. And everyone wants you to be like that. So yeah, that's what I've been trying to do.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about the on-field tendencies, the tactics, the communication, as it pertains to the Uruguayan League, as it pertains to your team? Especially when you come from Germany, you know, they hammer you on the Zweikampf, and they have their own ways of kind of using the tactics and using, especially when we played Regionalliga, every team would high press. So how does it kind of pertain to you there and the style of play?
I think there isn't much difference in that, where Uruguayan football is very, very aggressive. There's a lot of pressing. Not every team, but a lot of them do. They try and press you as much as they can until you give up. So I think in that way it hasn't been much of a change. Maybe in some regards tactically it is a little bit different, but yeah, maybe a little bit more extreme in the sense of, I think in Germany or even in other countries I've played in Europe, there was a lot of gegenpress, which is, you know, counter press, whereas in Uruguay it's just constant pressure. So there isn't much space. It's hard to receive the ball and be able to turn around as an attacker, unless you're playing against the two big clubs, Peñarol and Nacional. Especially Nacional is a team that usually tries to play better football, so there is a little bit more space, more in the ways of higher level football in Europe. But if you compare to Regionalliga, I would say the lower clubs here in Uruguay have a very similar style of play of just trying to constantly press and annoy the other team. Yeah.
Did you have any doubts about kind of returning to Uruguay? Was that ever, when you got the call, was there ever the feeling of, maybe this isn't the right time, or maybe this isn't the right opportunity, or did it feel right kind of going into it?
100% felt right. It was something that, again, I think we even spoke about when I was in Germany, where I was tired of being in the situation of uncertainty, of not being able to evolve in football. And I knew here in Uruguay the opportunity to actually evolve and grow into a better player and hopefully into better leagues was definitely the best decision by far. So it was something that I was speaking with the people who I work with here in Uruguay, that, you know, if there was anything interesting that could come up, I would be extremely happy to come. And that's how it was. I did have a couple other options to come here. Obviously, as a professional football player, you also have to be comfortable with what they're paying. You can't come to play for free, and the money here in Uruguay, in some regards, can be quite bad in some teams. So, I'm just glad that this team was able to. Well, we were able to agree on those terms. But apart from that, I was always gonna say yes. So. Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind to come back to Uruguay.
That's amazing. And I want to go back to basically your beginnings with the youth national team and then first jumping into the professional game, because I think we've talked about it now, but your career, I mean, you've moved around so much, and I think that's developed you as the player that you are today, which has set you up to be ready to move back to Uruguay and take this chance, because I think the amount of moving around, and not only moving club to club, but country to country, is really difficult. And you've obviously, you can say mastered it, but you've been able to adapt every time you've moved from country to country. So when you were with the youth national team, I mean, how was that? And then jumping into the professional game and then kind of moving from country to country for the next opportunity?
Well, I think first thing you said, I think I agree with that. I think it's something that I've been able to learn how to adapt wherever I go to, which makes it easier for me to come into a team and feel comfortable. At the same time, I think it did affect me in a lot of ways of moving from team to team and never being stable and committed to one team and actually focusing and putting all my my focus and effort into that one team. But in terms of youth football or national team youth football into professional football, it was quite an easy change from youth to professional, because it wasn't from one day to the next for me. I did train a lot with first team football when I was young, but I never actually made my debut. So it was something that took a couple of years for it to actually happen. So then again, it wasn't really something that was a tough transition. I think it felt right when I was making my debut. It felt like I had already done it before in a way, but at the same time I hadn't. So yeah, pros and cons. I think it was definitely good, and I learned how to be able to move from team to team. But at the same time, looking back, I think it would have been good to also stay at one place and actually develop as a player, which I was never able to.
I get that, because you're almost kind of always thinking about the next step, and that can be. I think it's a very easy thing to do as footballers, because like we said, we're always constantly trying to play at the best level that we think we can. So that's always thinking of something as the step, as the building block to the next thing. And I think it's fine to think that way, but you have to separate that from the present as well, because I found it too, if I'm always thinking about the next thing, I might not be working as hard in training or something like that, because I'm thinking, okay, I can't be hurt for this trial coming up, or I can't be, for this. So it's a difficult thing to be able to separate the two, though, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Both are very important. I think it's important to have goals and as we said before, your main goal or short-term goals, they're very important. So, if you want to play at a higher level, you've got to be training and having those goals for the future. But at the same time, if you're just thinking in that next team, you can't be focusing on, your current team. And I think that is something that happened to me where wherever I would go, apart from a couple of teams, I was always thinking on where I was going to go to next, or what opportunity would come next, or what would happen if I were to do well, instead of just focusing on doing well and enjoying and again, working and growing as a player wherever I was. And it's definitely something that I've always tried to get better at, and I still am. It's something that I speak about with my father quite a lot. He's always told me to stay grounded, to stay where I am, to not think in the future, in both ways, in positive ways and in negative ways. Because as a football player, it can also happen where something negative happens, and then you can also start thinking about what might go wrong if it continues in that way, instead of actually focusing on getting better and
especially from an injury or something like that.
Well, that's the worst. I think it's very hard to stay focused and to actually keep those goals when you have a long-term injury. It's very important to be able to know that you will come back, you will get better, you will get stronger, and you will be able to come back and get to where you want to get to. All very difficult things which you have to combine and have them. Yeah, they all have to be separate, but they all have to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking on, kind of what Sean was bringing into the topic, this Uruguayan national team time, how do you reflect on that time, especially now, and can you kind of take us through maybe some of the players or some of the, highs of those moments?
It's a bittersweet memory. I think it brought a lot of joy for me at that time, especially looking back. It was something that, there was nothing better for me at the time. It was what I'd always dreamed about since I had been 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever age it was. And I enjoyed going there, knowing that I was in a group of players that were, so-called the best players of your age, of your country. There's nothing better than that. And I played alongside a lot of top-level players that today are playing at a very high level. But again, the bitter part of the memory is knowing that I was there and I had a lot of potential to actually reach those levels at a young age, and different reasons behind why I'm not there make me feel like I could have done or should have done other things to be where these other players are as well. But at the same time, I know, again, as we said before, is to never feel like it's too late or to feel like you can't make it anymore. Every player has their own way, and there is at the end of the day, what you grew up looking up to doesn't mean it's the only way. And I think even being 26 today, I still have hope, and I know that I can, get to the level of football that I always dreamt of. And I think that's the most important, to always believe in yourself and to always know that it can come. So.
I love what you said. I love what you said there, though. Like, I love the idea that there isn't just one version of success, in a way, is that as kids, like, it just comes back to, like, how we all thought about pro football as a kid, was we had to be playing under the lights at Old Trafford, signed by Manchester United or Real Madrid. But the reality of it is football, there's so many things that need to go right. There's so much luck involved. There's so many steps. You're also learning. You're going on this path as a young person. You're trusting people maybe that you shouldn't. You're taking steps that, sometimes are blind. But in the reality of it is, and we spoke about this with a player recently, is just bringing your position into focus right now. You play at a level that I think millions of kids or millions of players right now would dream to play at the level that you're playing at. And I think that's always an important thing in reflection for yourself, for us, for players in general, is to know there is a million people who would like to be in your shoes right now. And maybe how you said is you played with guys who are playing at a level that, of course you want to strive to be at. But you can't ever forget and be grateful for, where you are now and to the level of professional football that you've made it to.
I was just speaking to a friend about that the other day. How fortunate I am to actually be in the position I am. Uruguay is definitely one of the bigger countries in football in the world. And all the players that we all know of that are Uruguayan all came from this league, all of them. From Suarez to Forlan to Valverde to Darwin Núñez, they were all playing in the Uruguayan league not so long ago. And the whole country is a football country. They all want to play football. They all play football at any level. And they all dream of playing in this league. So it definitely, I am very grateful, and I am happy that I achieved to play in this league. It's definitely not something that I can forget about. It is something that I've always wanted, and I am at this level, and I am playing where millions of people want to be. Which is why I go back to saying, what I said. I really have to enjoy the now and enjoy the club I'm in now, and do my best where I am now. And whatever comes will come. If it's better, if it's the same, whatever it is, I've got to be focused in the now to be able to grow. So, yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, and a recent guest, Marcelo Palomino, also brought up the quote, like, comparison is the thief of joy. So it's like you can think of, okay, I played with this player and now he's here and he's playing in a Champions League final, he's in the World Cup, but that doesn't change your situation now. And if you just focus on what you're doing now and how can I become the best player I can now, and then maybe one day I will wind up in the same spot, but just basically comparing yourself and saying, oh, he's a much higher place, a better place than me, and when we were 15, I was a better player. It will just make you unhappy. There's nothing good it could do.
It brings absolutely nothing. I agree. And I think today I've learned to look at it like that. I was never a jealous person. I never looked at my old teammates and said, "Oh, why is he there and why am I not there?" I've always been happy for my teammates. I love watching them and seeing them doing well. And I never have the feeling of why am I not there. Again, unless you talk about it and you actually think about where you are, it definitely is hard to focus on yourself and to not think of other players and to dream about where they are. But yeah, I think it's the most important thing is to just be happy whatever level you're at. Focus on where you are and focus to grow as a player, as a person, as everything, And I think that's the way forward with whatever you do, not only football. If you're happy where you're at, or if you're not happy where you're at, try and find happiness. And if you're happy, continue and strive to be, to be happy and to grow as a player. And I think that's the most important part of enjoying and being happy and actually feeling fulfillment of whatever you do.
We're talking about becoming the best player that we can be. When are you your best player on the field? So what mind state are you in? What are you doing? What are some things that you're doing on the field that is making Mateo the best version of himself on the field?
Focus. I think focus is very important. Determination, confidence. I always say confidence is number one.
So for you, is that confidence getting on the ball? Is it what? How does that look like?
Confidence in general. Confidence from the coach. Confidence from your teammates. Confidence in yourself. Not necessarily receiving a ball, but just confidence knowing that you are a good player. You are someone who can do well. Knowing that you are, the best version of yourself. Believing that you are the best version of yourself in that moment in time. I think that's the only way to actually perform. If you don't believe in yourself, or you don't believe that you can do it, or you can actually achieve whatever you're setting out to do, you won't be able to achieve it. So it's just confidence, believing in yourself and believing in that, in what you can do. Yeah.
I like how you kind of brought it into, it's not such an individual answer. Like there's so many more factors. There's the club's confidence, there's players around you. There's so many things that need to happen and go well for you to play at your best. And like staying on that, how does that pertain to the type of player you are? So kind of the same question, but more in terms of what are the things that you're doing that kind of show your best version of a player? So in terms of getting in the box, creating, laying off, whatever it may be. What is Mateo at his best on the field?
Being creative, for sure. Confident with receiving the ball, trying to do things that are different, especially being an attacker. I've played in many different positions as a 10, as a 9, as a winger. I've played pretty much everywhere in the attack. And I think when I play the best is when I'm feeling good, when I'm feeling confident, and when I try things that are different, trying to do things that will surprise a defender, change of direction, change of speed, getting into the box, coming back out, moving around a lot. And then also bringing your teammates up with you, because if you're feeling good and you see a teammate that isn't, as you said, you can't really perform if your teammates aren't performing, especially as an attacker. You need to get balls fed into you, and if they're not playing well, then it's going to be harder. So I think it's a mix of everything. But lifting up your teammates and lifting up players around you is also very important. So I try and do a bit of everything. Again, I think I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to find the perfect way of being the best version of myself. And I think it will always be like that. You're always going to find new ways of being better and progressing as a player. And I think you'll never find that perfect version of yourself. And there's always going to be things that make you better, things that make you worse. Each day is different. Each game is different. So it's just about really giving it your all, giving it your 100, and trying to bring your teammates up with you.
When you've gone through periods where you are lacking confidence or you don't feel you're at your most confident self, what are some ways you bring yourself back to that?
I think that's one of the most difficult things about playing football is getting back your confidence when you don't have it. If it is because of you not believing in yourself, is it because if it's because of coaches or other people around you trying to bring you down, it's definitely very, very hard to bring yourself up again. It can be an injury, it can be lack of game time, it can be a coach that isn't interested in you, because it can happen to anyone. I've seen incredible players not play, and their level can just drop immediately. And I think, again, the most important thing is to just believe in yourself. If it is you working on yourself outside of training, or having someone who can help you, a mentor, a mental coach, there's a lot of ways to get better. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is your mindset, and just do everything you can to get stronger mentally. And in my case, it's having people around me, such as my father, my mother, people who care for you, people who are trying to lift you up, people who are trying to bring positive vibes towards you, trying to lift you up, trying to show you those things that you can do, or your potential, or trying to not to bring you down. But at the same time, once you do well, to not fly and to not feel like you've conquered everything, to stay grounded and continue doing what you're doing. But yeah, it's definitely the hardest part in football, and it's something that you constantly have to work on.
Speaking of kind of times when your confidence might have been tried, this period that you had recently without a club, knowing that you're good enough, maybe going through times where you're questioning yourself, did you feel in those times a dip in confidence, a dip in self-belief, or was that a true tested time for you to kind of work on yourself and work on your inner confidence to know that something will come and I'm good enough and I will be back on the field when the time is right?
There's a lot of up and downs. I think as a football player, it's never going to be a straight line. There's going to be days that you're going to, feel extremely confident in yourself and know that whatever happens, you're going to find something and it's going to go well. And then there's going to be days that you're going to doubt the journey, and you're going to doubt what's going on. You might not believe that what you want is going to happen. Again, the important thing is to not let yourself get there, and to continue, working on yourself, and continue to try and be positive and to try and believe that it will happen. In my case, I was always quite confident. I always knew my potential, my what I could give to a team. Maybe the part where I wasn't as confident was in other people. As a football player, you have to trust a lot of other people, and that's the hardest part, because a lot of the times it isn't about what you do, but what other people do for you to actually be able to show yourself. So that's the hardest part, to put your trust in someone else to help you find something when things aren't going well. Because when things are going well, you will sell yourself. If you're doing well, people will come to you. It's when you're not doing well, it's when it's really hard, because people won't come to you, and you're going to have to try and find ways to get out of the situation you're in. Luckily for me, I had a lot of contacts. I was in contact with a lot of people, which were able to help me come back to Uruguay and play professionally again. So, yeah.
Speaking on that, because we mentioned agents, well, I don't know if we mentioned actually, but I wanted to ask this question much earlier. How do you kind of navigate that sphere of agents, and what advice would you have to players when finding an agent or working with an agent?
Depends on the situation you're in, right? Again, the same thing again. If you're doing really well, then the most important thing is to find someone who you can trust in, which is very difficult. I always say that if and when I do get to a level where I can, have that possibility of people coming towards me, is to just have someone, you really trust in, such as it can be your father, it can be your brother, it can be family, any other family member, your best friend, to just work with them and a lawyer. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing well, you don't really need the contacts. On the other side, if you're not doing well, or if you're young and you're looking for opportunities, it's hard, because I've never been in the situation of not having anything or no contacts, or I've never been in a situation where I've had to reach out myself to people I don't know. But it's just about making other people believe in what you can do, and finding someone who also believes in your potential and also believes in what you can do. I think that's the main key, is just finding someone who will also believe in you, showing your skills, showing what you can do, your mindset, and trying to get him on board with your mindset and your mentality.
The Layover hoodie is out now. Select size is still available on our website, footwork.club/shop, or follow any link in our bios. It will be the best hoodie you own. We personally guarantee it.
I wanna play a game with you, Mateo. And I wanna see, I'm looking at your transfer marks right now. And I wanna see if you name everyone in order correctly of the teams that you went to. Starting in July 1st, 2012, can you name the teams, and can we go until now?
2012.
That's where it starts.
The transfer marks.
On transfer marked.
I actually 2012. That's got to be Guatemala. Is it? Comunicaciones.
Yeah, it's the U20 team. So you're there.
U20.
Where is that?
That's not right, because I was 14 there. I was not playing in the U20 in Comunicación.
Bro, you were good.
I did play for that team. Not long. I think I was with their under 17 sides when I was 14. So
is your transfer marked photo also when you were 12?
No, I think that was when I was in Holland. So I was 22, I think.
No, it's fair enough. You got a mustache and everything.
You look quite young there, though. Yeah, you're right. I look a lot younger.
So, all right. So this is wrong, but I guess we'll
The club
start.
is right. The club is correct.
Yeah. So we'll just go on from the club then. All right. Who's next?
Comunicación. It has to be Defensor. I don't know if that's there, but it's
throw in the country for each of these clubs too.
Yeah,
just
because,
part of this game.
Defensor Sporting, which was in Uruguay. That's when I signed here at 15, 16. I just turned 16. I signed. That was my first professional contract. So I signed with Defensor, 3-year deal. That was 2000.
And then
14, 15. Then it was Huracan in Argentina, which is a first league team in Argentina. Then came, technically is Le Touquet, which is in France, which it was never the plan for me to play there, and I actually never signed a contract or played there. The idea was for me to go and train there. The agent at the time was one of the owners of the club, and he just invited me to train and stay fit while I found another club, which was in England. I did play one official game because it was an amateur league, and they just said, you don't have to sign, you can just play. So I'm not sure if it is there, but if it is there, that's the reason.
it is there. Yeah.
It is there,
Yeah.
okay. Then
Technically.
Then the rest I know because I've seen it on Transfer Market. So I wasn't sure about the 2K. After that is Barnsley.
In England.
That's correct.
No, you're good there. You're good.
Then comes Topos, which is Netherlands.
Yeah.
And then Wuppertal, which is Germany.
Yeah.
Then Schalke, Germany as well. Then Phoenix Lübeck, Germany as well. And now Uruguay, the current club I'm in.
Stark, bro. Nice.
Well done.
I got it right?
Very nice. Yeah, you got everything right. Yeah. So let's go into that because we talked a little bit about you dove into France a little bit there, but I want to dive into that transition into Barnsley. So going to England, playing for a club like Barnsley, which I'm sure most of these listeners would know. How did that come about, and how do you look back at that time there? What are some things that you learned the transition? How did it all go?
Well, my time before Barnsley was a tough time in my career. Pretty similar, but also not similar to the situation I was in previously to coming here. As I mentioned, I went to France to train to stay fit. It was during the World Cup in 2018. There were no teams that were really in action at the time, which is why I went to France, trained, and had a couple of options in England. The main one at the time was Barnsley. I travelled to Barnsley in December of 2018 to meet the players there, to meet the coaches, the staff, everyone involved. I was there for a couple of days. I trained once or twice. I then went back to France and then travelled back to sign with Barnsley in the end of December. It was definitely a good moment for me because it was, as I said previously, to go into Barnsley, it was a tough time. I didn't really know what was going to happen. I flew to France with some ideas, Barnsley being one of them, but not knowing if it was going to actually happen. So it was I was definitely happy that it happened, and it was a moment where I was once able again to focus on football, and try and grow. And it was again I have some fond memories of Barnsley, and some not so fond memories, knowing that I could have maybe done a lot more and maybe continued there. Again, going back to always trying to move. Maybe I could have stayed there for a bit longer and developed as a player. So, pros and cons for sure.
And what made you want to leave Barnsley? Or was it you were not playing? Was it injury? Did they not offer you anything?
My idea when I went to England was to get first team football. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew I wasn't just going to walk in and play. I had come from Argentina, from a first league in Argentina, but I had a lot of issues. I ended up resigning my contract. So I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I did have the idea of going in and playing, and it wasn't the case. I got to Barnsley and we were first in the table. The first team was first in the table, first and second during most of the season. They were fighting to go up to the championship, obviously a very prestigious league, where there's a lot of great players. And I was a young player with not much first team experience, mostly training and some friendly games or whatever in Argentina, and then mostly just youth football or under 23s or second team football. So I went into Barnsley. I played a lot of games with the under 23s. And didn't really have much chance in the first team. I trained with them quite a lot. It was a great experience to be part of that team, in the locker room, and everything that was around it. I had never experienced being in a team that was doing so well and fighting to go up to such a good league. And I learned a lot from a lot of great players. Today, the three strikers are all playing in the Premier League. So it was.
Oh wow!
Three great strikers were, who I was learning from them, and I think that was the thing. When we got promoted, I wasn't playing in League One. I wasn't getting any chances. The coach is actually the Hannover 2 coach now at the moment, and he always. I spoke to him a couple of times, and he was always like, "Yeah, just keep training, but you're not part of the plans for the first team." And I was just playing with the second team, and I just felt like I was old enough to be playing first team football. And once we got promoted to the championship, it was there was no it made no sense to stay. All these players stayed. They were all playing in League One. They were all doing really well, and I wasn't. And I felt like I wasn't going to get any first team experience there, and I decided to look elsewhere. Which again could have been a mistake. I could have looked at the option of staying there. 2 months before the season ended, I had already talked, or a month and a half, I had already said that I wasn't interested in staying unless it was really going to be being part of the first team, and they said that wasn't really a possibility. I decided to leave, and without a real option, I decided to leave, which was maybe a dangerous decision. Yeah. So.
And did you spend much time afterwards without a club?
Yeah. So I left Barnsley and I was probably 6 months without a team, which was when COVID hit, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So Barnsley to Holland. Yeah. So before that, I had gone to Denmark. No, sorry, getting a bit lost. I left Barnsley.
He's getting lost in his own story now.
I left Barnsley and I went to Reading, which my cousin had an apartment. I stayed there, training, looking for options. I then trained with a team in England called Aldershot, just to stay fit. I knew a coach. Someone put me in contact with a coach there. I was quite close to the area and I was able to train with them. I was there for like a couple of months maybe. And again, at the time I had the option to maybe stay there, but I had bigger things in mind. I didn't really want to play. It was National League, 5th League at the time, which looking back now, I think 5th League is a great league to play for a 21-year-old. You know, you can get great exposure there. But at the time I thought I wanted bigger and better. If it was outside of England, if it was in England, I thought I could get more than that. And I ended up going to Holland. I was in a team, Topos, which is where I ended up signing. But before that, COVID hit, and I was in Denmark. So I'm getting really confused with the story. I just thought...
This is Mateo Aramburu, people.
I got a call, I had to cut it off, and I got lost. Sorry. I left Aldershot to Denmark, to Copenhagen, with a new agent, with a new idea. He had gave me some ideas to go to Sweden, also to Denmark. So I traveled to Copenhagen. I was with Viborg on trial, which at the time was the team that played in the second highest league in Denmark. I even played a game against Silkeborg, which was a Superliga team at the time. I did really well. I scored a goal. We won 2-0. And I remember speaking with the sport director, when we were there, that it was going to happen. I was going to sign, that they were really happy. They had sold a player to Iceland, or I so thought they had sold a player to Iceland. We had played on a Friday. We came back on Monday, and on Monday I arrived to the training, and the player from Iceland had come back, and he was there. And I then found out that he had not agreed on personal terms in Iceland. And the sports director said that they didn't have a budget to also sign me if he was going to stay, which ruined the hopes of me going to Viborg. I then spoke with the same agent. He said that I had an option in Holland. I went to Den Bosch, which is a club in 2nd League Holland, which I also kind of went on trial. They were very interested in me, but it was more of like a one-day thing where they said, "Come, we want to see you play, see if you're fit, and if everything is well, we can arrange everything." I arrived on a Monday. I trained on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they had agreed that they wanted to sign me. We spoke about all the contractual part of the deal. It was all good. On Thursday, I come in to sign, and on Thursday, COVID kind of started to come into Europe, and it was a really strange thing. On Friday, we had a game against Topos, which was my future club, they had wanted me to play that game. Sign on Thursday, play on Friday. We come on Thursday, and they said that the game was going to be postponed because of this so-called virus we now know is COVID-19. And they said to not worry about it, that we were probably going to play it next week, maybe on Monday, maybe on Wednesday. I had no real worries. They said, yeah, just come back on Friday. We're going to train on Friday. I came back. I then started to put a bit more pressure with my agency, to sign anyways. And they said they wanted to wait a bit, see what was going on. I arrived on Friday, and they said that the investor had pulled out because he didn't know what was going to happen with COVID, and he didn't want to sign a new player without knowing what was going on. I think on Saturday morning, they closed the airports, and my agent at the time was living in Copenhagen, and he said, just come to Copenhagen, stay with me, and we'll see what happens. I flew on Friday night, and on Saturday morning they closed all the airports, and we all know what happened. So I was stuck in Copenhagen for the next 4 months, maybe. It was from March to, what was it, June or July, where I was then trying to get back to this club which were interested in me. They then started bringing more issues with the contractual side, which is why I then started to look at other options. And Topos came into the picture, and they said that they were interested in having me, which is why I just ended up signing there. So it was a lot of strange things that happened in that time.
Yeah.
Luckily, it ended up working out. So, yeah.
The politics and the things that are not seen, that are really behind the scenes. I mean, this is just in the span of a couple months, and all of these things happen. But this is obviously COVID was a different time and presented so many more difficulties. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that a contract might not work out. It goes back to that, how we talked about in football. So many things have to go right. And one little thing could go off. One sporting director, one owner, one little virus 2 years later, you're like, holy shit. Like, who would have thought, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all got to fit into place, and it's hard to continue. I try and not look at or try and blame other people or blame situations, because at the end of the day, I mean, you also got to look at yourself and say, okay, what mistakes have I made to be in this position? Which I didn't do as much when I was younger. I'd always say, why is this happening? Why has this happened again? It's always people who are, telling me that something's going to happen and then it wouldn't happen. And now I'm trying to look at it in a different way where I'm trying to say, okay, I've also put myself in the situation, what can I learn from this? How can I get better for it to not happen again? We all know that things have to all fit together, and, there's a lot of people who can help you or break you. But at the end of the day, you are your own player. And as we said before, if you're doing well and you're playing, you're the best player, then people are going to come after you. And, that's what you have to focus on. And that's what I'm trying to do now, focus on myself and not on all the other people surrounding me.
Yeah, well said. Before we get into some of these last questions, we want to cover at least the transition into Germany. So you spent time in, what is it, Wuppertal? That was the club, right? And then also with Schalke. So why the transition into Germany then? Can you speak about those opportunities in specific, and if you saw the pathway in Germany as the next best option for you?
Yeah, so as I had previously mentioned, going to Holland was a great move for me. I was looking forward to playing there, looking forward to growing there, and I really had that idea of staying there, doing well, and hopefully moving on to better things. Obviously, it didn't go as planned. In Holland, I wasn't getting as much minutes as I wanted. And yeah, come January 2021, I spoke to my agent and I said, I was tired of constantly moving around teams and not being the main player, not being a player that was actually playing. Always having reasons as to why this, why that. I just wanted to play football. And I said, I don't really care where it is. I want to play football. I want people to actually want me, right? And that's when the option in Germany came. It came through a very good friend of mine. I met him when I was 16 here in Uruguay. He's a Brazilian who came to Uruguay at the time on a trial where I was playing. And we hit it off really. The first week he arrived, he was someone we got along really well. And we stayed in contact all these years. He then moved to Sweden. He was playing around there and then moved to...
The Layover hoodie is out now. Select size is still available on our website, footwork.club/shop, or follow any link in our bios. It will be the best hoodie you own. We personally guarantee it.
Okay.
He put me
So he was at
contact-
Schalke.
He put me in contact with the guy who, brought him to Schalke. Yeah, and we spoke about some options there in Germany. He talked about Dritte Liga, third league in Germany. He talked about Regionalliga. Again, at the time I was playing in second league in Holland, and I was more interested in a Dritte Liga move. He then explained how Dritte Liga is very professional, and there's the level is very, very high. It's hard to get into it and to actually play, which is the whole point of why I wanted to leave Holland.
Exactly.
There was an option in third league. There was a team that was interested, but they weren't giving any assurance that I was going to play. They didn't need a starting attacker. They were interested in having me as a rotation player. And then Wuppertal came in a couple of days later, saying that they were really interested in having me. At the time, they were doing very poorly in Regionalliga. Wuppertal is a very big club. They played Bundesliga in the 70s and the 80s, and second Bundesliga not so long ago, maybe 20 years ago. Big stadium, good fans, and in the situation they were in, if they were to get relegated to Oberliga, the club would probably cease to exist. So they were really looking to bring in a lot of players that can help the team to not get relegated. And I think that's really what caught my eye. The club being a big institution, them wanting to bring in players to actually come in and, bring something into it that they didn't have now. Which is exactly what I was looking for, a team to give me the confidence to do what I can do. And once I found out that was the case, we both decided with the agent that was the better option. Which is why I moved to Wuppertal. They ended up signing 7 players in January. So I was one of seven new signings, and all high-level signings for Wuppertal, for Regionalliga. 2 players on loan from Bundesliga club. 1 player who was playing in Dritte Liga, who had a stint in Real Madrid as a young player. He also played Bundesliga in FC Köln. A lot of very good players to come in, and we definitely showed it. From January onwards, we were the second best team apart from Dortmund, Borussia Dortmund 2, which ended up as champions. And I was also the top goal scorer in Wuppertal in that time period. So it definitely was a great move for me to get playing again, and it worked out, and it was really what I wanted. Which also obviously helped me then move to Schalke. We were also playing in the same league as Schalke, second team. We played against them. In the game against Schalke, I scored and assisted. So it was a really good decision, I think. It was first time in my career where I had felt like I had made the perfect decision, So it was really good, yeah.
And I bet it felt like one of those times where, especially being the top scorer, it felt like you may have had some more options where people were kind of coming after you in this regard.
Yeah, I think it was the first time in a long time that I felt like I was wanted. I had interest from Schalke, which was definitely the biggest club. Depends, because it was Schalke at the time. I thought it was Schalke's first team that was also interested in having me as a fourth option striker. That was the idea, at least. But I think looking back, I signed the contract with Schalke 3 weeks before the season ended, which could have been a mistake again, because I could have waited for other options. There was still a long time for, more than 2 months of the transfer window. And I decided to go with Schalke, mostly because of what my agent said. He said it was a great opportunity to go into a big club, prove myself, play with the second team, have maybe some minutes with the first team and grow from there. But I definitely could have waited and maybe looked for something in a professional team, and again, as a starting player in a professional team. Which, again, I think, looking back, it's easy to say, but at the time, having a club such as Schalke interested in you is is very hard to say no to.
It's hard to say
Exactly.
no to Schalke, yeah.
Which is why I ended up taking that decision. Which was, again, I think I look at it as a great time in my career. I learned a lot of things in Schalke. I trained with incredible players, great coaches, great coaching staff, and it definitely made me a better player. But not having played in the first team definitely hindered my career in other ways as well.
Right. Dope, Mateo. I think then let's wrap it up here. So, reflecting on your career up until this point, why did Mateo make it as a pro and why is he still going?
2 reasons. I think support, people around me who've always been helping me. Family, my father, my mother, and everyone around. And mindset. I think having the mindset of never giving up, of always fighting for your goals, fighting for what you want, and to never give up despite all the things that have happened.
Love it, Mateo. Let's head into the fast feet round, some quick fire questions to end off. The first one being your favorite player growing up.
Diego Forlan.
Favorite moment in football?
Playing with the Uruguayan national team and signing for Schalke. So,
Most difficult moment in your footballing career.
my 2 stints without a club and not knowing what was going to happen.
Best advice you ever received?
To always be ready because the chance will come.
Best player you ever played with and against.
Because of the level he's made it to, is Federico Valverde. Against, it's a tough one. Apart from Sean, it's a difficult one.
I mean, where we were together, so I'm up
True,
there with
you
Valverde,
play
right?
against honestly, I don't know.
I mean, Sean in the 5v5.
Yeah,
tough.
that's for sure.
Is a
That's
tough
for
one.
sure. That's a difficult one.
Ivan?
I know it's a quick fire question, but I really don't know who it could be.
Maybe Ivan Klasnic.
Ivan Klasnic. I mean,
Yeah,
again,
there you
5-a-side, but let's just say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go with the 5-a-side.
Favorite place you've lived?
Montevideo and Hamburg.
Nice.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Hamburg, man. Yeah, good call. If you weren't a footballer, what would you be?
Something to do with art, probably, or in the footballing world, without being a football player.
Yeah, I thought you would plug the side hustle right there.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
cue the photography.
I mean, I'm not sure if I would see myself as an actual photographer, full in, as my
Gotcha, yeah.
job. Yeah, but something to do with art, or again, something to do with football, coaching,
in a creative space, something like that.
Yeah, something creative, or mix of that and football in other ways. Yeah.
Right. Favorite book?
It's in Spanish, but I don't know what it's called in English. El Monje.
Say it in Spanish.
It's a book that I'm reading now, and it's one that I'm enjoying a lot.
Do you have any quote or mantra that you personally live by?
Not necessarily a quote, but I think to never give up and to always fight for what you want.
Mateo, we want to thank you, man, for coming
Muchas
on.
gracias, mi amigo.
Muchas gracias, vielen Dank. We can't wait to come see you in Uruguay one day.
Yes.
We wish you the best this season, and yeah, man, we're so happy for you in this move, and we can't wait to see what you do and the enjoyment you get out of this. And like I said, can't wait to be chilling, maybe taking some photos at the basketball park again soon, maybe this time in Uruguay. But
Yeah.
thank you, man. We appreciate it.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me, and a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thank you very much.